Hello YouTube, we're on the Real Programming channel. I'm its host, my name is Andrei, I greet you, welcome. This is our 70th lesson. We'll talk about HTML and JavaScript. We'll talk about chapter 4, JavaScript functions and objects. Serious JavaScript. Okay, let's go talk about this. Okay. Can you call yourself a scripter yet? Probably you already know your way around a lot of JavaScript, but who wants to be a scripter when you can be a programmer? It's time to get serious and take it up a notch. It's time to learn about functions and objects. They are the key to writing code that is more powerful, better organized and more maintainable. There's also heavily used across HTML5 JavaScript APIs, so the better you understand them, the faster you can jump into a new API and start ruling with it. Strap in, this chapter is going to require your immediate attention. Expanding your vocabulary. You can already do a lot with JavaScript. Let's take a look at some of the things you know how to do. Let's look on Sublime text. This is our script. And remember, please don't forget, you will find all the code and materials of this lesson under this video in the description. Link to Google Drive not only link to Google Drive. Okay, grab an element from the document object or model. Get the value of a form input text field. Create a new array field with string. Use libraries of functions. Get property of an array like length. Make decision based off conditionals. Use the elements of an array. Use browser function like alert. So far, told. A lot of your knowledge is informal. Sure, you can get an element out of the DOM and assign some HTML to it, but if we asked you to explain exactly what document.getElementById is technically, well, that might be a little more challenging. No worries, by the time you leave this chapter you're going to have it down. Now, to get you there, we're not going to start with deep technical analysis of getElementById. No, we're going to do something a little more interesting. We're going to extend JavaScript vocabulary and make it do some new things. How to add your own functions. You've been using built-in functions like alert or even mathRandom, but what if you wanted to add your own? Let's say we wanted to write some code like this. We are grabbing the user's GUIs just like we were on the previous page, but rather than having all the rest of the code and the previous page as a part of the main code, we address it just have a nice checkWith function. We can call that does the same thing. Create a checkWith function. First, to create a function, create a checkWith function. To create a function, use the function keyword and follow it with a name like checkWith. 2. Give your function 0 or more parameters. Use parameters to pass values to your function. We need just one parameters here, the user's GUIs. 3. Write a body for your function, which goes between the curly brackets. The body contains all the code that does the work of the function. For the body here, we'll use our code from the previous page. Optionally, return a value as the result of calling the function. Here we're returning a string with the page message. Sorry. Our function works. So how does this all works? What happens when we actually invoke a function? Here is the 10,000 foot view. Okay, first we need a function. Okay, let's see you just written your new bark function, which has two parameters, docName and docWeight, and also a very impressive bit of code that returns a dog's bark depending on its weight, of course. Here's our handy bark function. Now let's invoke it. You know how to call a function already, just use its name and give it any arguments it needs. In this case we need a string with a dog's name and the dog's weight, which is integer. Let's make that call and see how this works. Our function name is bark. Here's where I'm passing two arguments, the name and the weight. When we call bark, the arguments are assigned to the parameter's name in the bark function. And anytime the parameters appear in the function, the values we passed in are used. And let the body of the function do its work. After we assign the value of each argument to its corresponding parameters in the function, like feed do docName and integer 15 to docWeight, then we're ready to relate all the statements in the function body. Statements are evaluated from top to bottom, just like all the other code you've been writing. What's different is that we're doing it in an environment where the parameter names docName and docWeight are assigned to the arguments you passed into the function. Here we evaluate all the code in the body. Optionally, we can have return statements in the body. Okay, and that's where we return a value back to the code that makes the call. Let's see how that works. Remember, functions aren't required to return a value, but in the case the bark function does return a value. Tracing out the function docWeight is not less than or equal to 10, so we use the else clause and return fido says woof as a string value. The string fido says woof is returned to the calling code. That's the code that invoked the bark function, and when the string is returned, it is assigned to the variable sound, which is then passed to alert, resulting in the dialog. I keep telling you all of the HTML5 APIs are chock full of functions, objects and all that advanced Javascript stuff. If we could have another moment to talk, we know, by chapter 4 you thought you'd be flying in the HTML5 jetpack by now, and we'll get there. But before we do, you really need to understand the underpinnings of the HTML5 JavaScript piece, and we're going to do that in this chapter. So what are these underpinnings? Think of the HTML5 JavaScript API as made up of objects, methods, otherwise known as function and properties, and so to really get in the master this APIs, you need to understand those things pretty well. Sure, you could try to get by without knowing them, but you'll always be guessing your way around the APIs while failing to use them fully, not to mention making lots of mistakes and writing buggy code. So we just wanted to drop you note before you go too far into this chapter to tell you what we are up to. Here is the great thing, but at the end of the chapter you're going to understand objects, function, method and a lot of the related things better than about 98% of JavaScript scripters out there, seriously. Okay. The function exposed, and no, they're different. We'll talk about this in the next lesson, and don't remember Don't forget, remember, you'll find all the content materials of this lesson under this video in the description, link to Google Drive. And here is our lesson 17 about JavaScript is end. Thanks for watching, subscribe to my channel, please put likes, share with friends and comments. Do exercise, drink more water for the brain, meditate with this exercise every evening, after you have done all the work preferably. And read more books on the topics. Thank you. That's all. Thank you. Bye.